Next time you are feeling discomfort, can you pause, notice where you feel it, and what exactly do you feel? How would you describe it? Imagining that I have never felt anxiety. Imagine I have never felt fear. How would you explain those sensations? Is it tight? Is it heavy? Is it cold? Is it hot? Is it loud? Is it soft? How might you describe it? And just notice it. A couple of breaths and just notice it. Something I can promise you, I can't promise many things, but if you sit and notice it after a couple of seconds, even a couple of minutes, it will change. I'm not saying it's going to be poof gone, but it will feel different. That tightness might now be a little less tight, and maybe the sound changed if it had a sound. But likewise, in moments that you're feeling pleasant sensations, can you notice, where do I feel this? What is it like? And how can I invite that in more?
Welcome to Therapist Uncensored. Building on decades of professional experience, this podcast tackles neurobiology, modern attachment, and more in an honest way that's helpful in healing humans. Your session begins now with Dr. Ann Kelly and Sue Marriott.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Therapist Uncensored. This is Sue Marriott, and I am with Rebecca Kase. And we are going to do something really fun for you today. Fun for us, at least. I think it'll be fun for everybody. This episode is going to be introducing some of the neuroscience concepts that we use a lot in therapy. And it can sound technical, and we're going to make it really, really user-friendly. This is kind of the need to know about neuroscience for just everybody. And then we're going to follow up and do another episode, kind of an advanced conversation on interoception and implicit narratives. It's juicy. So welcome. I'm so happy that you're here.
I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Rebecca, sometimes I just like to ask guests to describe yourself. We've already done the official bio so that people can kind of get a sense, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. I am a seeker. I am a seeker of science and woo-woo and learning things to live my best life, I would say. So I live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest and enjoy my time just sitting in my yard and listening to the birds and looking at the trees and playing with my dogs. And I love lifting weights. I have fallen in love with that in the last couple of years. And
Me too. I love strength training. It's so fun.
It's so good. It's such a lesson in mindfulness and what it does for your nervous system and toning that vagus nerve. And
not to mention, it makes you feel like a badass.
it really does. Yeah. When I look at my biceps these days, I'm like, dang, yeah, feels good. And I love challenging myself in all ways. You know, I'm a healer, but I'm an entrepreneur, and I didn't discover that I was an entrepreneur until like 8 years ago. I didn't go to school for that. I don't come from a family lineage of business owners, and I'm always looking for ways to flirt with the edge between activation and being grounded, kind of riding waves of adrenaline. Not that I'm an adrenaline junkie, but I like to challenge myself, like lifting weights. I just went skydiving over the weekend for my birthday to teach myself I can do scary things.
Did you do tandem?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Not ready to do that kind of scary thing.
Me too. I've done skydiving a couple of times, actually.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Oh, we
fun.
should go together sometime. Maybe do a podcast jumping out the plane. Yeah, it was my second time. So it's a great exercise in working with your vagus nerve.
With edges. Yeah,
Working
really.
with edges. Yeah.
Somewhere you had said publicly that you identify as a survivor. Can you say a little bit more about that and then move into what got you interested in the nervous system?
Yeah. So I used to have PTSD. So I'm a sexual assault survivor and a survivor of domestic violence. And I am very fortunate. I had a very healthy childhood with awesome, amazing parents. And then things went south in my late teens and throughout my 20s, and was living with PTSD and chronic anxiety and panic, and was looking for maladaptive ways to self-soothe, which included drinking and smoking cigarettes and drugs and not taking care of myself. And, you know, I was always seeking peace and happiness and joy, but I was missing the most important piece, which is like, you can't find happiness and peace and joy if you're not engaging in the daily habits that allow your nervous system to experience peace and happiness and joy. So I was going to therapy and going to yoga and, doing some of the things, but I wasn't truly embodying what it means to live a neuro-informed life is what I call that now. I mean, I didn't even have knowledge of this. In this day and age, it seems like the nervous system is everywhere and nervous system regulation. But I'm talking, like 20 plus years ago, like we weren't really talking about the neurobiology of therapy and what your nervous system needs if you want to live a good life. And, I have compassion for myself if I was living a life that was very much driven by unresolved trauma symptoms and, being in an actively abusive relationship for many years. And I was doing my best to cope. And it took me some time to find a shift and recognize, oh my gosh, if I just like really focus on my sleep, my anxiety is better the next day. And if I really focus on how I'm feeding and nourishing my body and my brain, wow, I feel a little better the next day. And when I cut people out of my life that's just not good for my body and my brain, oh gosh, I feel a little better. So over time, I'm grateful to say, like, I don't have PTSD anymore, thankfully. And I've been sober for many years and have really taken the hardships of my life and learned some hard lessons that now I feel a real calling to share them with others of this is how you heal. And this is why therapy alone, it just isn't enough.
I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. I know many people will be able to identify and join you on that. So, a neuro-informed life is an interesting way to say it. I think of polyvagal theory, it's safety, right? It's all about safety, safety, safety. And that's what you're describing are these choices, these life choices that you're making that bring safety to your body. Is that how you would characterize it?
Yeah, I think it's about creating a life where your body has access to cues of safety. And, sometimes we can make choices to do that. And sometimes we're living in situations where we can't, like our environment, our communities, violence in our home that we may not be able to escape, factors outside of our control. But then there's also engaging in behaviors that allow your body to relax to experience safety, because you may have cues of safety around you, but you're living in such a wound up, hijacked state that you can't really take it in, that you don't give yourself permission to connect to that. And when we can allow ourselves to connect to cues of safety, which can be small and big, from, a big cue of safety is my husband's loving smile, and he sings me songs all the time. He's so sweet. Like his little love songs for me, and a hug, like that's a big cue of safety. But a little cue of safety is also just as I'm sitting in my office here and I see the light dancing and across my blinds, and that feels like a cue of safety. And there's an intentionality in this of how can I invite in more cues of safety into my life, rest my attention on that, and then give myself permission to actually lean into that and soak it up. Because a lot of us are living in this hustle culture, and a patriarchal capitalistic society that values go, go, go and productivity and how much did you get done today is a measure of your worth, right? And so we don't actually give ourselves time to slow down and notice the cues of safety and be present with them. And those are really powerful moments that can do wonders for your neurobiology.
Longtime listeners of this show will recognize that we've quickly waded into this idea of expanding capacity in what we call the green zone, which I love your point. It doesn't mean that you're actually safe, that there can be things happening around you. And yet you can also cultivate this nervous system state of kind of alert rest, this flexible space where that you can move into action if needed, that you can be alone and be okay. Yet you can also move into connection and be okay. So if we were going to sell an elixir to the world, right, this would be the elixir that we would try to promote. A lot of times people say, well, you have to, like you said, you have to kind of begin to tune in. And so that's why I thought if we focused on the fancy term for it is interoception. But can you break that down for us and help us understand in the most basic level what that means?
Yeah. So interoception is interesting how it's talked about out there in the world and in our field. Sometimes I hear it implied as, I need more interoception. And we all have interoception. It's not something that you have or you don't have, but it's about how attuned to this neurobiological process are you. So interoception is a process by which your brain essentially is keeping tabs on all of your bodily processes. So your brain is keeping tabs right now on your body temperature and your blood pressure and your heart rate and what's happening in your stomach and your digestion, and if you're hungry, if you're thirsty, if you're tired, if there's pain. And it perceives these signals within your body, and then it makes adjustments or modifications, or it gets your attention and says, oh, I'm thirsty, I should go get something to drink. So interoception is something that we all have, but when we learn to pay more attention to it, to get curious about what is happening in my body, what is my brain perceiving, and how could that be influencing my current state? I'm feeling anxious, or I feel depressed, or I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I feel really happy and peaceful. What does happy and peaceful feel like to you? Even being able to describe what happy and peaceful feels like is you describing an interoceptive process. You being able to put words on, oh, this is what my brain is perceiving that tells me that I feel happy and peaceful. So, for example, anxiety comes in many flavors and can be due to lots of different things. You might be anxious because you have a big presentation you're about to give, or because you have to have a hard conversation, or maybe you're anxious and you don't recognize a clear trigger. Maybe it's because you drank too much caffeine. So your brain may perceive, oh, I notice my heart rate is beating faster than typical. I feel fluttery. I feel jittery. Those are all signs and symptoms of anxiety. And for you to be able to then get curious about what's the context within which all of these bodily experiences are existing. So if you notice those symptoms and like, well, I just drank like 3 cups of coffee, I think it's caffeine, I'm not feeling scared about anything about to happen in my life, then it may be, maybe I'm not going to drink another cup of coffee. I'm going to drink some water and go for a walk. And these are just jitters. Like nothing is, I don't need to fear anything. But if you are perceiving, I'm in the context of I'm about to give a big presentation, oh, I'm so anxious. Oh, I'm going to be anxious on stage. I'm going to forget how to speak. I'm going to forget how to talk. I'm going to fall on my face. What if I fart in front of the whole audience and they all hear me? Like whatever that is. And your brain starts making predictions, which is what your brain's job is. Your brain is always trying to make predictions based on the data available to it, which is available to it because of interoception. So when we learn how to cue into what is my brain perceiving, what's happening in my interoceptive awareness, we have all of this information available to us that we can more effectively navigate our life.
I mean, how is that different? So if we just go really slow, right? A lot of times you might ask someone, to just notice what they're feeling or something like that. How is interoception different than just perception?
So interoception is a form of perception. So we have a couple of different forms of perception. So Stephen Porges from polyvagal theory talks about neuroception, which is kind of a passive form of perception in which your brain is monitoring without your conscious awareness for danger. And if it perceives something dangerous, it's going to move your nervous system into, fight or flight or freeze. We have proprioception, which is about our perception of our body in time and place. It's proprioception that tells you where to stand in line next to somebody at the grocery store. Like I'm not going to stand like on top of them. I'm aware of my body. We also know social cues. Like that's not appropriate, right? But you can sense when, okay, I'm my body is in the right space here. And so interoception is like that internal perception, you being able to perceive what's happening in your body.
And that's not always easy. So, for example, even like with a client, there are times when moving them into their body is too much. This is just a mystery to me. So, if you're asking me a question of how I feel, it can, in and of itself, create alarm. And in cases like that, I am apt to help folks talk about something concrete out in the world. But over time, right, as safety builds, I think there's a lot of people that will, if you say, what are you feeling? They'll be like, I don't know. So again, I know it might sound basic, but it's like just movement like receiving, becoming aware of what your body's doing, receiving that data is what we're talking about. I wonder if we could just go really slow on ways to do, and first of all, just normalizing that not everybody can just do that. We're trained professionals, and many trained professionals, it's hard to do that. And there will be people that it's easy to do that, naturally without a single, having nothing to do with formal education. But I guess my point is that it is being able to use it in the way that you're describing is a muscle to be developed. So I wonder what the beginning, like let's say somebody who really, really has not ever been led inward and has survived and lands on your couch, kind of talk us through there as far as like how you work up to helping them get comfortable in receiving all of this incredible wealth of data that's coming up from the body.
I love this point because if we think about all of the different ways that our brain perceives what's happening inside and outside of us, it seems that interoception is the one that for many of us feels the most vulnerable, because many of us live in a society and with trauma that actively pushes you to disconnect from this form of perception that you have. To be in a hustle and grind kind of speed, you kind of have to disconnect from your body to push through. If you're a professional athlete, you have to kind of get past the pain and not pay attention to that to be able to go the extra mile. And when we're living through traumatic experiences or with unresolved trauma, our body may be the focus of harm and danger. So learning not to feel your body is a way to survive whatever is happening to your body. And then when you're living with PTSD, it feels terrible inside. It feels awful. Like living with PTSD, anxiety, depression, they all feel terrible and you just want a way out. And so one of the ways out is, how do I actively disconnect from these incredibly uncomfortable sensations through drinking, through drugs, through sex, through binging on food or TV or dissociation. So this is a very vulnerable form of human perception. And I think it's important that we all just honor that. And so if in this conversation you're feeling a little like, oh, I try and not feel my body, of course you try to not feel your body. I bet if we knew your story, that would make a whole lot of sense. And I bet Sue and I would probably be like, yeah, we would do the same. So when connecting to the body feels confusing or even dangerous, if you're someone who, when I try and feel my body, I feel overwhelmed with fear and I get flooded with panic and it just feels terrible. I don't want to do it. How can you perhaps start with just some very gentle, neutral ways to connect? That might be just stepping outside and feeling the sun on your skin. And can you just notice where you feel the sun, what it feels like, and what happens in response to feeling that sun? Or perhaps when you get in bed at night, one of the things that I do every day is, getting in bed at night and sliding into the covers just feels so good. And I just allow myself to feel the coolness of my blankets, of my sheets, and the comfort of the pillow. And I take a big stretch. I just allow myself to feel that for a moment. Just a moment.
Hey everyone, I have some great news to share. Our partner, AG1, just launched their next generation. So, in the same single scoop, you now get more vitamins, minerals, and upgraded probiotics. And it's now backed by 4 human clinical trials. So, in fact, AG1's next generation is now one of the most clinically backed greens powder. They went above and beyond the industry standard in testing and have made a great product actually even better. We frequently speak on the podcast about how important gut health is to our moods, our overall energy. And it's so hard to know what to do about it. I hate taking pills, and finding the right regimen doesn't always sometimes seem like just daunting. But AG1 Next Generation is clinically shown to fill common nutrient gaps, even in healthy eaters, actually, and support gut health. So this helps me know that I'm doing something good for my health. I actually look forward to my afternoon drink. I still love the taste. It's a refreshing way to get my foundational nutritional supplements. So, subscribe today to try the next generation of AG1. If you use our link, you'll also get a free bottle of AG D3K2 and AG1 welcome kit, as well as 5 upgraded travel packs with your first order. So make sure to check out drinkag1.com/therapist uncensored to get started with AG1's next generation. And notice the benefits for yourself. That's drinkag1.com/therapist uncensored. Hey, y'all, I love this sponsor, Peak Nandaka. I know I'm not alone in falling into mid morning slumps, and then I would drink caffeine as a fix to pick me up, but it would give me the jitters or I'd have the drops. And when I switched to Peaks Nandaka, it is amazing. It's made with functional mushrooms. However, it's a 20-time extract of medicinal mushrooms. So, unlike some of the other mushroom coffees out there on the market that use grains and fillers and mycelium, this is a potent mushroom extract, and it also has ceremonial grade cacao and other things that make it taste great as well as support your metabolism. It reduces my sugar cravings and hunger pains. But what I really love is that it keeps me focused and energized all day long. I seriously love the effect. When I run out, I actually find myself tracking the delivery because I love how productive I feel when I drink it. So it's packed with prebiotic and probiotics, so it makes the digestion smooth. And like I said, the 30% cacao butter helps it absorb. So if you try it, I really think you're going to love it. So you can get 20% off plus a free starter kit. You're going to get a cup and a frother with it with your order. And when you shop exclusively at peaklife.com/TU, that's PIQUE life.com TU, you'll get 20% off. All right, let's jump back in.
So those were great examples, Rebecca, from the outside in, which is a great start. And then once we kind of begin to know how to use the information of like wiggling our toes and feeling our skin in the environment, then I imagine you move a little more inward. And what are some of the basics when we can begin to do reflection and scoop out that data to be able to use?
So you make such a great point of how can we start with moving from the external to the internal and then the internal to even more deeply kind of internally, right? And for a lot of us who feel chronically hijacked by incredibly uncomfortable symptoms, going to that inward space is the harder place. So start with the external and find things that are neutral or bring you a moment of joy, even if you can't hold on to it for too long, because that takes some practice as well to build those neural networks. But if we're starting with the internal, I, for several years, struggled with chronic pain. And I had a condition that I eventually had surgery for. And I'm grateful that I'm on the other side of that now. And I'm not struggling with chronic pain, but I was struggling with chronic pain for several years. And when you're living with something that's a constant, chronic pain, chronic disease, chronic whatever, it can be really hard to go internal. And so this is a technique that I use that I'll offer to folks out there who are living with chronic states of, I feel terrible inside. When we feel anxious or pain or something that's so uncomfortable, our brain gets hyper focused on that. And it feels like that's all we can see, right? All I feel inside is pain. All I feel inside is sadness and despair. But the reality is that there are other sensations in there, even if they're neutral. Maybe there isn't anything that feels pleasant, but we have to train our brain to take off the blinders because your brain is like, this hurts, it's dangerous, it's dangerous, it's dangerous. Pay attention. And what we can train our brain to do is look at this hurts, but this doesn't. So I use this when I was having some big chronic pain days of oscillating my awareness. So I would look for somewhere in my body that felt pleasant. Sometimes I could find something that felt pleasant, and it could be something as simple as, my elbow, or something that feels neutral. And a place that can often feel neutral to us is the tip of our nose, because there's so much cartilage there, you can't really feel much there. Or maybe your earlobes, or is there just somewhere that feels neutral? And intentionally trying to shift your awareness to rest on, just notice the tip of my nose, just notice the tip of my nose. Maybe you notice the temperature or the sensation there, the lack of sensation, and just rest your awareness there for a couple of moments. If all you can tolerate is a couple of moments, then it's still a couple of moments. And that is just one example of a technique you can use when you're living in these chronic states of overwhelm and dysregulation, and a way that you can find the neutral spaces and just start with the neutrality.
And if you can't feel the tip of your nose, I was trying to do it with you. And so my version would be like when I inhale through my nose and feeling the air go by, like that would be a version of kind of just that very basic, but there's something moving and it helps you find it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then can you then take us maybe to another level then, right? So we've gone outside to just kind of beginning inside. And then where are we headed? If you practice this and you do a lot of reps, you're doing strength training and you're doing a lot of reps and you're learning all of this, then what's the next level?
So the next level would be being able to sit with the discomfort and even the comfortable sensations for longer periods of time. The beauty of learning how to do this is it makes the uncomfortable sensations less, even though I'm sure maybe some of you are like, I don't believe that at all. If I pay attention to the things that are uncomfortable, it's only going to make it worse. I have had clients tell me this as I'm trying to teach them these techniques. And the reality is that's not typically what happens in our neurobiology. Our sensations and feelings and even thoughts rise and fall and run their course. And sometimes those uncomfortable sensations, they linger longer because we don't give them a little bit of space. I sometimes think of them like toddlers throwing a temper tantrum, right? If give the attention and the attunement and the care, and the tantrum is going to lessen. You can almost think of your feelings and sensations in a similar way. But this is also true for the pleasant sensations. If you give more time and attention to the things that feel pleasant, oh my gosh, they're going to grow, and you're going to learn to notice the pleasant sensations more often and more frequently. So some ways that you can practice this on a deeper level is next time you are feeling discomfort, can you pause, notice where you feel it, and what exactly do you feel? How would you describe it? Imagining that I have never felt anxiety. Imagine I have never felt fear. How would you explain those sensations? Is it tight? Is it heavy? Is it cold? Is it hot? Is it loud? Is it soft? How might you describe it? And just notice it. A couple of breaths and just notice it. Something I can promise you, I can't promise many things, but if you sit and notice it after a couple of seconds, even a couple of minutes, it will change. I'm not saying it's going to be poof gone, but it will feel different. That tightness might now be a little less tight, and maybe the sound changed if it had a sound. But likewise, in moments that you're feeling pleasant sensations, can you notice, where do I feel this? What is it like? And how can I invite that in more? There's an acronym that I use in my book, The Polyvagal Solution, called BASK. And it's meant to be a reminder for us in those moments that we're feeling good, to bask in it, to soak it up so that your brain can take in that data. So B stands for be present. So when you notice you're having a pleasant moment, how can you just devote your attention to right here, right now? Be present with it. Take it in. A is about attending to cues. So attend to, what is it that is allowing you to feel those pleasant sensations? Is it the sunlight? Is it sitting with a warm cup of coffee? Is it snuggling with your cat? Is it, just taking in a really sweet message that a friend sent you perhaps? And then S is for simmer and sensation. Simmer in the pleasant sensations. It feels warm and it feels soft, or it feels expansive. It feels joyous. It feels energizing. And then C is for connect. How can you connect with it more deeply? I was practicing this the other day. I was just on a walk and I was just taking in my environment, and I noticed, gosh, I feel so good right now. So I was basking. And when I got to the sea, I allowed myself to smile, and I actually went over and I touched a tree to take in that sensation. And I paused on my walk and I just looked around and I connected more deeply to all the stimuli in my environment and within my body. Now, it's a bit more of an expansive practice, but it's not about needing to bask for 5, 10, 30 minutes or an hour. It's usually little doses. I basked for 20 seconds.
These are great hands-on examples. And I think you have more of those on your website, right? So that if folks are getting, following this and getting a lot out of it, where should they go?
Yeah. So you can check me out at RebeccaKase.com. And on my website, you'll find a link to my podcast called Thrive the Podcast. You'll find a couple of my courses that are focused on working with your neurobiology and helping to reset is the term that I'm using, but it's not completely accurate because we're not necessarily resetting our neurobiology, but we're trying to learn how to live aligned with our nervous system. And I also have business course offerings for entrepreneurs who are curious about how do I apply principles of neurobiology to my business? Because talk about hustle culture.
And there's also some practical kind of downloadable things. Is that right?
Yeah. So we have some free resources there and a workbook and lots of tips that we also post on Instagram and social at the Rebecca Kase.
And just adding another layer too, as you're getting more sophisticated and you're having this expansive practice, and then it can get into how your body tricks you, right? Is that what I'm actually feeling? Or because I want to move in, especially in the next episode, into story. I love your emphasis on the positive and when we feel good. And I was thinking today actually about like if you've had a lot of shame and you're used to kind of feeling unworthy, that when you feel these positive feelings, it's actually, those are the harder feelings sometimes, that it messes with your story about shame or about who you are. I guess, will you say it, just prep us for the next conversation, which is going to be a more advanced conversation on interoception and implicit narrative and story, which is fascinating. And it is what we want to change as therapists. We're looking at changing some of these implicit narratives. So can you kind of set us up for how interoception then interacts with stories?
Yeah, so our physiological state becomes our story when it's repeated over and over and over again. So when we're thinking about trauma history, trauma is typically defined by, something that happened, usually for those of us who are feeling really hijacked and caught up in the trauma narrative and re-experiencing those symptoms. It happened again and again and again and again, especially when we're living in these chronic states I live with chronic states of shame. I live in this chronic maladaptive story that really prevents me from living my best life. I believe that I'm unworthy, that I'm unlovable, that I'm broken. When I was living with PTSD, I truly believe that I was unlovable. And even though there was a part in my head that, said, I was a therapist at the time. So my therapist self was like, no, that's a cognitive distortion. My body believed that I was unlovable. That's what interoception, that's what all of those feelings and sensations created as my day-to-day narrative that my brain slapped some language on and said, all of these feelings and sensations mean this. That's what the story is. So starting to unpack that first is possible because we all have neuroplasticity. Our nervous systems are incredibly resilient and they're always changing, and we can build new neural pathways. So if you feel stuck and hunkered down in a shame story or burdened by unresolved trauma symptoms, please hear me saying that change is possible. Absolutely. You were born for it. It is in your DNA. But it takes little bits of new experiences over a culmination of time. So when we have lived with a lot of maladaptive experiences, those get stored in our neurobiology and we re-experience them. And the way to help our nervous system rewire and shift is by creating adaptive memories. adaptive experiences in our neural networks. This is why attachment is so important, because early, safe, healthy, secure attachment creates a big adaptive foundation for us to rely upon. But if you didn't have that, or if you did and you were kind of like me and then a bunch of terrible stuff happened and overrode it, you can get back there. It's just about making little steps every day to build some curiosity and possibility of a new adaptive story.
That is said beautifully and hopefully. I love the emphasis on hope. A lot of times as we study neurobiology, it gets depressing. If you're just looking at the neurons and what's happened and the damage done. But I agree with you. Like we say neuroplasticity, get some, which we are. And by listening to this podcast, seriously, like this is part of it. You're updating your question. You're able to question your stories about yourself and the world. It's just part of the scaffolding to understand what's happening in your body and to update it into a more accurate, compassionate narrative. So if you enjoy this conversation, then you're going to really enjoy the next one that we're about to have in the next episode, where we're going to go into a more advanced, a little bit more clinical conversation specifically about interoception and implicit narrative. Can you remind everybody, Rebecca, how to find you, your books, all the things, all the good things?
Yeah, so you can find me at RebeccaKase.com, at the Rebecca Kase on Instagram. My book is The Polyvagal Solution, which is a self-help book that'll teach you all about neurobiology, the vagus nerve, your autonomic nervous system in a digestible way. I promise I speak in a very approachable way. You're not going to fall asleep and your eyes go crossed because I'm speaking like a neuroscientist. And for therapists out there, you can check out the Polyvagal Informed EMDR book, which is all about polyvagal theory and EMDR.
All right. Well, be sure and share this episode with somebody that you feel might need it. Don't forget to leave us a rating and review, because what that does is, wherever you're listening to this podcast, you can just go click follow and rating and review. And what that does is it helps us be found and discovered by more people, so that even more people have these tools, especially during these times of such dysregulation in the world. We need to be spreading this good news of living a neuro-informed life. All right, guys, thanks for listening, and we'll see you around the bend.
Therapist Uncensored is Ann Kelly and Sue Marriott. This podcast is edited by Jack Anderson.